Good morning and welcome. Something interesting has been happening in our profession. Roles are becoming more specialized. We have capture leads, proposal writers, graphics specialists, pricing strategists, and even executive summary experts. At the same time, there's convergence. Sales, marketing, business development, and bid management are increasingly overlapping. The boundaries are not as neat as they once were. So now we require both depth and overlap. And that changes what it takes to produce work that wins. Before we go further, let me introduce myself. I'm Deshni Naidu, and I work closely with bid professionals and organizations investing in APMP certification. So this isn't theoretical for me. It's a conversation I have often. Keep an eye out for polls throughout the session. There was a fun one at the beginning. Please interact so we can get some data from you, our audience. And I also encourage you to put your questions in the chat, and we will get to them once the panel discussion has been concluded. Today, I'm joined by three professionals who each bring a different lens to this conversation. Keke Muka joins us from Apex Group. She attended the Graphics Micro-Certification Masterclass and brings a practitioner's perspective on what it looks like when you deepen a specific skill within an organization. Lordek McCarthy is a senior security solution architect at Entity Data. He completed the Executive Summary Micro Certification and brings the perspective of someone operating at the intersection of technical architecture, commercial positioning, and proposal influence. And last but not least, we have Larissa Cornelius, CEO of nFold, a strategic proposal consultancy and the only APMP authorized training organization in Africa. She's worked on complex bids for over 20 years and sees firsthand where organizations build real capability and where they don't. Thank you all for joining us today. So this is where the conversation becomes practical. When roles evolve, fragment, and overlap, one thing does become clear. Broad knowledge is essential, but in specific roles, depth changes outcomes. And that is the role of APMP certification. Micro-certifications weren't created to replace foundation. They weren't created to be easier, and they certainly weren't created as academic add-ons. They exist because certain roles now require focused, demonstrable depth in specific skills. So let's start by clearing up the biggest misconception. Larissa, from what you've seen in organizations, what's the biggest misunderstanding about micro-certifications?
I think that it's that people assume micro means small, and it doesn't. Micro certifications are narrower in scope, but not smaller in significance, and that distinction matters. What I often see is organizations and teams trying to solve precision problems with broad training. If executive summaries aren't landing, as an example, or visuals aren't persuasive, or pricing lacks competitiveness, they default to general development or worse, AI. So don't get me wrong, broad training is essential, and AI is a fantastic tool to build efficiencies. But really what broad certification does is it builds a shared language and lifecycle understanding of the overall business development process. But micro certifications exist to hone in on very specific skills that directly affect outcomes. They build focus depth where performance is leaking. So they really help you to specialize. And therefore, they're not lighter versions of the APMP Signa certifications like foundation and practitioner. They're really specialized tools for targeting capability gaps across the various stakeholders who may not need a full certification journey, but may need to know how to price to win, for example.
Thanks, Larissa. Lodek, when you first heard micro-certification, what did you think it was going to be? And be honest, when you were enrolling for a credential, were you enrolling for a credential, or were you, because you generally wanted to sharpen a specific skill?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I've, when I first heard about micro certification, I think the first thing I assumed was that it was a lighter, maybe a more condensed version of a full certification, almost like a teaser. But once I looked at the executive summary micro certification properly, I realized very quickly that it wasn't about less effort. It's about focused effort. And I didn't specifically enroll for the badge. In the pre-sales role that I'm in, I already sit in a room where decisions are influenced. But what I wanted was to be more deliberate about how I influence. So yes, I write or I contribute to executive summaries, and that's got to translate complex cybersecurity risk into business impacts, urgency, and confidence. And often, it has to be done in 1 or 2 pages. It's not a technical problem. It's more about a persuasion problem. So for me, this was about sharpening a very specific skill that directly affects whether a deal progresses or stalls. And this credential is useful, but the real value was a shift in how I think about executive attention and decision psychology.
Thank you, Lodek. That was very interesting. Keke, graphics in bids are often positioned as decoration rather than persuasion. So you are already a trained designer. Why did you feel the need to pursue the graphics micro certification? What gaps were you trying to close?
Hi, everyone. I think for me, more than anything, I wanted to catch up on the latest trends, because often when we are trained as designers, we are trained to sort of like study how people take in information and sort of like make it easy for them to absorb that information. And I found that, okay, I've been a graphic designer in the proposal space for quite a while, but how can I go back, into reminding myself what those basics are? And I actually found that I had forgotten a lot about what I was taught, and I had sort of like fell into that, bad habit of just like treating text like it's just, okay, the client must just read this and be able to absorb. But then I thought about it, and I thought, even in situations where there's time constraints, there's like little tweaks that can be done when it comes to playing with colors and text sizes, for example. And yeah, for me, I quickly realized that because I'd fallen into those bad habits, I needed this more than I actually thought. For me, I even thought that it was going to be an easy process, like, oh, I know most of these things already. I'm more advanced. Therefore, this is just like, I'm going to cruise through it. And I actually found it quite challenging in such a way that it tested the things that I thought were part of my DNA already. I had to sort of like bring those back into my day-to-day and remind myself why I'm in this space. And now that I am, in the last few years, have become a proposal manager instead of a graphic designer, I feel like I had lost a little bit of that, and I needed to bring those two skills together. So it was quite impactful.
Wow, that's an amazing answer. And what's interesting from all of your answers is that none of you described this as smaller. You described it as sharper. You spoke about persuasion, you spoke about influence and specialized focus, getting back to the basics, but enhancing that. So it's not broader knowledge, it's more focused, and it's not another badge, it's deliberate depth. So I think maybe the issue here isn't the word micro. I think we still sometimes equate size with significance, right? But in a profession that now demands precision, I think sharpness is being strategic. So when we require both breadth and depth, precision isn't a downgrade. Like we said, sharpness is strategic. So let's talk about when that precision actually makes sense. So Larissa, from an organizational perspective, when does a micro certification make more sense than sending someone straight to foundation?
It always starts really with one question. What is the problem you're actually trying to solve? Or what is the skill you're trying to hone? What is the result that you want to get? So if you're building foundational capability across a team, or you want to provide a solid foundation, mind the pun, where you need a shared language, lifestyle understanding, structure baselines, then foundation and then following that practitioner makes a lot of sense. It gives you the breadth and it anchors people in best practice. And that's really ideal for long-term return on investment in bid, proposals, tender, and capture management. For those of you who don't know the term capture, it's really the sales, pre-sales, pre-pursuit activity management. And I'd say that's best for those people who need to have those journey within the business development lifecycle. However, if you're sitting with the concern around executive summaries aren't converting, or your proposals are boring, are so even make you fall asleep, never mind your customer, or your proposal lacks visual impact to stand out from your competition, or you keep losing on price, then you're not dealing with a breadth issue, you're dealing with a precision issue, or where you need some specialty. And that's where the micro certifications make more sense or offer the perfect add-on. So, you know, for me, I like to think of the signature certifications as, you know, it gives you, here's a lot of best practice, and micro certifications hones in. Our masterclasses are at nFold. We've decided to pair our masterclasses with a masterclass and the APMP micro certifications, because not only does it build these specified specific competencies inside the bid life cycle that are critical to growing the organization's bottom line, but they also mix theory and practical application to drive skills development. In addition, each masterclass provides useful AI tips, because let's be honest, that's the life we live in now. And that helps to drive efficiencies, of course, where allowed by your organizations. And that avoids this junk in, which inevitably results in junk out. So the micro certifications that are currently available, to give you the idea of the specific nature, is executive summaries. Micro certification focuses on evaluator psychology, commercial framing, and persuasive structure. More importantly, what intelligence is required to really position you for the win. And here's a hint. Much of that happens way before you start writing. The graphics micro certification focuses on visual persuasion, and it's not just about being pretty. In a world where we're dealing with lower attention spans, we are in far more competitive environments. Design needs to carry strategy. So strong visual thinking And it's more about the thinking that helps you simplify the complex, tell your story faster, and sell more effectively. So content is becoming shorter, more visual, and increasingly multimedia. So it's about staying abreast with that. We also have the bid and proposal bid and proposal writing. And that's about sharpening your compliance structured, evaluator focused writing. And this is a critical skill for subject matter experts, solution architects, proposal writers, salespeople who have to write the executive summaries or part of the documents, and editors. And so writing persuasively for proposals is a very different skill to how you're taught to write academically, information-wise, and even marketing. It's really about mastering the language of success. Then you've got the competitive price to win micro-certification, which focuses on commercial positioning and strategy to strengthen value and increase your probability of success. Everyone talks about price, yet it's often left to last minute. And what that means is many organizations are not even pricing to compete, let alone pricing to win. And then lastly, the artificial intelligence micro-certification builds the practical AI capability in RFP responses that improves efficiency, strengthens compliance, and supports better decision-making under pressure. It helps professionals stay ahead of the curve, demonstrate readiness for the future of winning business, and prevents bad AI written nonsense. So each one goes into deep specific skill sets that helps you or your team master a specific skill set. So the question isn't which is better, it's more about which capability gap you're going to close. Because in a mature business development function, I want to say that because you can't divide the proposal and bid process from the business development function. Not everybody needs to master the entire life cycle. I wouldn't expect someone like Lodek to need to go through a foundational practitioner around, proposal professions, but really hone in on where the writing, the executive summary, the price to win skills is probably where he would find, as an example, more value. And I think if you align that development to role design, micro-certifications become very strategic in a business, and they're very powerful when you're solving for targets of depth. In short, like you said, they're not smaller, they're sharper.
Absolutely. Wow, thanks for that, Larissa. I love that nFold brings the AI angle into the trainings. I think most of us are not sure how to bring that in authentically. And I also attended the competitive price to win micro-certification, and writing your pricing narrative persuasively is an amazing differentiator because not many of us do it that way. So it's amazing how we focus on telling the story in other areas, but not in the pricing area. And that micro-certification for me helped understand how to bring that pricing into a storyline that makes such a big difference with our customers. So thank you for that.
And what I'm hearing, investment message, sorry, Desh.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Definitely that ROI message, right up front. But it helps you articulate that a lot more stronger. So yeah, what I'm hearing really, it isn't really about which certification isn't better. It's about diagnosing the real problem, right? And if you need shared understanding across the bid lifecycle, then that's breadth. But if performance is leaking in a specific area, then that's precision. So precisions is where micro-certifications become really powerful. Okay, so let's make this practical. Lodek, Keke, I'm curious how you're thinking about this in your own development journey. Have either of you done foundation certification? And how are you thinking about your next step? What would guide that decision?
I think let me jump in there first before KK comes in. I haven't done the foundation yet myself, but that was a very deliberate choice and not necessarily an oversight, right? So in my current role, I already operate across the full life cycle. So sales conversations, solution shaping, proposal input, and executive engagement. So I have a functional breadth from experience, but what I needed wasn't more awareness of everything. It was depth in the moments that matter most. So for me, it was the executive summary, the point where technical credibility has to convert into commercial confidence. So I absolutely see foundation as part of my future development, especially if my role expands further into more bid leadership or governance. But at this stage, the micro certification delivered a faster, more measurable return for my role that I have.
Thank you, Lodek. KK?
Well, I was lucky enough in my previous organization to be introduced to APMP and nFold very early on in my career. And as you can imagine, as somebody that studied graphic design, I never thought in my wildest years that I would be a proposal manager today. I don't know if this is like a proposal management inside joke, like you don't choose this career, it chooses you, right?
Yes.
So I have already done my foundation. I am foundation certified. And since moving into the role of proposal management, I'm looking into further upskilling. And the reason I say this is because the fact that I didn't choose this career. So I need to, now that it's my chosen, I'm choosing to stay within the space of proposal management. I'd like to know more and further upskill myself, especially the exec summary micro certification. I am desperate to get on that one because I'm finding, like Larissa just mentioned about AI, I'm finding a lot of, the key salespeople that are involved in these bids are using AI a lot, and we can pick it up, right? Like this was just like chucked from Copilot and just pasted into the document, and I'm finding that I have to rewrite a lot of the content. So for me, I think there's definitely sharpening that I need there in the exec summary, and just making sure that we are using AI correctly as something that helps you rather than you just let it do the job. We are already capable. We know more than AI could ever know, but we need to use the tool correctly. So I definitely, like, I've been talking to my line manager about me doing practitioner. So he would like for me to do practitioner, but I want to twist him into me doing more the exec summary micro certification, because I think that's where the need is, where I am. And then I can move on to practitioner once I feel like I am ready.
Absolutely. So yeah, we've all fallen into the profession by chance, but there is so much reward in this profession. I mean, definitely, right? But yeah, so thank you for that. Choosing the right one for your role, I think, is what I got from those answers. It's choosing the right one for your role, it's your current gap, and also your direction. So breadth and depth, they both matter, but I think timing matters most. And the real question is, what does your role require now? Like you said, KK, it's not practitioner right now, but it's the depth of the executive summary micro certification, right? So it's what your role requires right now and where you're heading next, because development is most powerful when it does align with direction.
Absolutely. I agree with that. And also making sure that you're always aligned with the organization goals as well. I think we tend to forget about that. And there's like such a powerful link in making sure that, and some of the proposal managers sometimes feel like they're stuck, like, oh, I'm a proposal manager, but I'm struggling to segue into another career in the organization. And I feel like micro certifications could actually be the catalyst that guides you into another space.
Absolutely. Well said. Thank you for that. So looking back, Lodek and KK, what was the actual value you gained from doing the micro certification, not in theory, but in practice?
Sure. So, like I said, for me, holding myself accountable. So I started to actively start to mark myself. So so in producing documents, I started to actually grade them and figure out, have I done what I've learned? Have I applied the sort of like key takeaways that I had? And I found myself being more aware of the boring texts that I was just like putting in there because, okay, we've got a deadline, we've got this, let's hurry up, we've got so many things that we need to um, submit by the end of the week. So it's like, okay, how do I, and actually in finding time after submission to do that and read through the document and figure out where could I have improved. And practically, what I do now is that I take the old and then I start to create a new document using that old one that looks better, that reads better, that absorbs better, and then trying to see how I can then implement it onto the next proposal. And I'm also finding that there's a lot of presentations now, way more than back in the days when we started out. There's like so many presentations and exec summaries in the form of slides. So it's like, how do we build that core messaging right at the beginning so that the client understands that you see them, you understand their pain points, and you've already got a solution for those pain points. So I think it's very, very key for me to constantly grade myself and make sure that, okay, this year I could have done better, and that way I pick up so quickly in the next one where I could improve. Yeah.
Thank you.
I love how Keke said presentations because, even though the certifications is about proposal writing and executive summary writing, but those are skills that you can bring into a boardroom, when you sit in front of a client and you have to do a presentation, as an example. Those skills that you learn, those points that you learn, in terms of driving a message home, comes very much to the forefront with that. If I have to look at before, my executive summaries were technically solid. They were accurate, they were structured, in many cases even defensible, but they were still written from a solution-centric mindset, and coming from a technical background, we love using bullet points, but but bullet points is not going to win, at the end of the day. so it's I would say, that I'm no longer second guessing whether an executive summary is a good enough or just well written. I can defend why it's structured the way it is, why a specific risk is foregrounded, or why a particular message leads. But the confidence matters, and that confidence comes out in the way that you write it, especially when you're challenging internal stakeholders, sales teams, and even AI generated drafts that looks really polished, but it completely misses the point. What I've seen at the end of the day is my summaries have become shorter, they've become sharper, they're more intentional, fewer words doing more work, at the end of the day.
I actually agree with that. And in as much as we are seeing the presentations, we are seeing the Excels as well for the consultancies, and we are seeing how they actually give us word limitations. You can only write this much of your answer, and it's so important to be very, very concise, very, very straight to the point, and be able to get what your intentions are out of that answer. And I think with the Excel is also quite difficult because you're not able to present visually what you're trying to get the client to absorb. If they let you add an attachment, like it's like, oh great, let's add something there. But I think there are so many benefits to actually doing these certifications because you can apply them in such a broad way
Yes.
in this profession. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's the most important part, is the application of it, right? I mean, that's individual value. It isn't automatic for everyone. You're becoming self-aware of how you can improve and implement new ways of enhancing what's already in place. We at nFold call it sharpening the axe. We cannot keep chopping trees with a blunt axe, right? And it's of course for professionals who already influence a specific part of the bid and want to elevate the confidence in great persuasive documents. So that's great stuff. Thank you guys for that. Larissa, from an organizational perspective, what changes when a team member develops that kind of targeted depth?
I'm going to try and keep it as succinct as possible, Desh. I think when someone develops targeted skills and applies them, because that's where the magic happens, you begin to see results. Outputs improve, fewer drafts go in circles, reviews become sharper, not longer. Decision-making strengthens, pricing becomes more intentional, messaging becomes more confident, and visual communication becomes more purposeful. It also changes accountability. It helps you know who owns the capability, and the performance becomes far more measurable. And ultimately, that's where the return on investment shows up. Individual skills development ultimately translates into organizational improvement, and more importantly, more wins, more money, more revenue growth.
Absolutely. So individual ROI then becomes organizational ROI, right? The reduced work, the better reviews, more persuasive content, which ultimately increases your win rate. Love that. So this question is to all panelists. If someone listening today is unsure where to start, what's the one question they should ask themselves before choosing a certification?
Good question. I would probably say, where does your contribution most directly influence a win or a loss, right? So it's not where you spend the most time, but where your work has the biggest impact. So once you can answer that honestly, I think the decision becomes clearer then. If the impact point is broad understanding, go foundation. If it's a specific skill that repeatedly shows up under pressure, go micro, one of the micro certifications. In my mind, development shouldn't be generic. It should be very intentional and slightly uncomfortable, because that's usually where the real growth is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's I love that, being uncomfortable.
Yes.
And I think Larissa also spoke about capability gaps, right? If I have to look at where I am versus where I'm going, what's my next? What do I need to get to the next step? And also aligning that with your organization goals. How do you then merge the two together? Because I think in that sense, it's then clearer to see your growth as you're working on it. So I would say, what's my next? And how do I align my next to the organization's growth? Then that will make it simple for you to decide, okay, this is the micro certification I need, or now it's time for me to do practitioner. I was very much ready to do practitioner, but now after having looked at what my next is, where the capability gaps are, where the organization is moving to, and increasing the win rate as well, and also seeing those gaps, capability gaps outside of me, where the organization also has gaps, right? There is that gap where AI is just now being sort of like abused. Is that the word?
Yeah.
So it's like, how do I then be a champion of AI and show people the correct way to use it? So there is so many ways you could take advantage of this beautiful thing that we now have, right? So yeah, that's how I would frame it.
Thank you.
I think our answers are all pretty similar. I think, it's really about, where do you need to get sharper? And I think that's personal journey and what do you actually want to master, how serious you are about winning, because once you know what their capability, it becomes easier and simpler. And what sort of resonated with me, what Kike said was, around also the value of the micro certification. And this is something that was amazing with Lawdeck and entity data is, that they proposal team, their solution team, and their sales team all did executive summaries. So now they're all speaking from the same hymn sheet because you need the technical solutions input, but you need the salesperson to bring the customer perspective input, and then you need the proposal team to almost play that independent role. And that's where a lot more power comes in, is, because now you're being very deliberate in improving that capability across stakeholders. So yeah.
So many insights here. That was amazing. I love the being uncomfortable because that's where growth happens. So yeah, some of the key takeaways from this conversation is, micro certifications aren't shortcuts. They are, in fact, precision tools. Foundation builds breadth, but micro certifications build depth. And in a profession that now requires both, the real mistake isn't choosing one over the other. I think the mistake is not making a deliberate choice. So before we open for questions, if you are responsible for your own development or for building capability in your team, ask yourself, are you solving the right problem? Because once you are clear on that, the certification choice then becomes obvious. So let's get into questions from the audience. I'm going to go into the chat quickly.
Hi, Deshni is on.
Hi, Izan.
We have answered a lot of the questions in the chat. So the attendees are very welcome to unmute themselves and even go on camera if you're wearing lipstick and earrings. So please ask the questions. Now is the time.
Don't be shy. We'd love to hear from you. Anybody?
I saw Melissa asked, in which case she sort of should start. And, in her case, because she's not been in bid management for a while, I recommended that, foundation is probably a really good baseline to start. If you're looking to get back into it, understand an overview of the best practices, that's a really great place to start. If you don't want to start in certification, you could also start in, just becoming an APMP member. And, that gives you access to things like the body of knowledge, a community, and access to this information. So, sometimes starting might be starting there first before you start through your training journey. So again, that it looks different to everybody. And, the certifications are really nice sort of add-ons. That was one of the questions that I saw. Yeah, and let's see. There was also someone asked about executive summaries. So I think we answered there what the baseline of executive summaries are. Of course, we're really only touching the surface by giving you little tips here in the comments. So, maybe that's something Lawdeck can share around his experience a little bit. What would you say were the fundamentals of exec summaries, Lawdeck?
Sure. So if I had to choose one takeout from that, right, I would say that it isn't that it didn't teach me what to write. It changed how I think about the person that reads it. And in executive decision making, that perception shift is what it's about.
Well
Fantastic.
said.
Thanks so much.
I see Mareka has her hand up.
Hi, Desh. Thank you.
Hey.
Morning, all.
Good morning.
I just want to add on to the executive summary comment, and forgive me, I can't remember the exact numbers, Larissa. I don't know if you remember them offhand now. But one thing that we have definitely seen in the executive summary certifications, we had over, I think it was over 150 sales and solutions teams that completed the certification executive summary. And although we didn't see an increase in win rate necessarily, the high value opportunities, we saw an increase in the win rate in the high value opportunities, which means the intentional writing executive summaries better and pitching that or explaining the value to the customers was evident that that's why we were winning more high value opportunities deals than just the smaller ones.
Awesome. Thanks for
Marika,
that,
I think
Marika.
those statistics were really interesting because I guess the question is, do you want to win more? Do you want to win more money?
Money.
And in your
Yeah.
case, you want more money,
Yes.
not necessarily
Yes.
more. So that was quite a
Yes.
fascinating statistics and quite an interesting outcome through that journey you guys took.
Because
I'm sure
most
there was a lot
people
more to it than the micro certifications, but it definitely was a key thing to bring your whole landscape together.
100%. And I think the message, the takeaway here is everybody thinks, oh, just measure the win rate. It's not always just the win rate, it is the value as well. And
Absolutely.
one of the last points that we did bring, as Laudek was saying, it gave you the confidence to not always have this argument or debate about an executive summary. It became easier conversation to say, well, this is the way, because you had people that were like-minded, that thought at the same thought process of how to do it. And then you do it again as soon as possible, not at the end. So it's just really that word about being intentional and even making people uncomfortable, right? Having uncomfortable and difficult conversations up front. It really just helps if everybody is singing from the same sheet.
Absolutely. Thank you, Marika, for those insights. And thank you, everybody, for all the questions. Thank you, Larissa, Laudek, and Keke, for sharing practical insights rather than theory. I'm certain our audience appreciated those insights. Laura?
Sorry, there was one last question, and I know we've literally got a minute, saying, would you recommend doing micro certifications to better prepare for practitioner level? Absolutely, Sia. I think practitioner is quite intense around your ability to apply. So sometimes it may be wise, like Keke, to say, let me actually do some of the micro certifications because they'll be covered in practitioner. You know, you can almost do that to hone your skills first in preparation for practitioner. I definitely think you would feel a lot readier in that, particularly in the sections that might be that you're not used to, like graphics or price to win.
Thanks, Laura. So if today clarified anything, it's this. Development in this profession has to be deliberate. Whether that's foundation for breadth or a micro certification for depth, the decision should align with the role you are building and the capability you need. We'll share the relevant pathways in upcoming sessions in the chat. If you would like help thinking through what makes sense for you or your team, please reach out. And to everyone who joined, thank you for investing the time. See you at the next Espresso yourself. Thank you.